The morning shift at Riley's Diner always started the same way. Coffee brewing, bacon sizzling on the griddle, and the familiar faces of regular customers settling into their usual spots. Jennifer had been serving breakfast and lunch at this small-town diner for over 10 years now. She knew everyone who walked through that door, knew their stories, their troubles, and exactly how they liked their eggs. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late September. The lunch rush had died down, leaving only a handful of customers scattered across the worn vinyl booths. Jennifer was wiping down the counter when she heard it. That deep, rumbling sound that made windows rattle and conversations stop. Motorcycles, a lot of them. The roar grew louder, then suddenly cut off. Through the large front windows, Jennifer could see a group of motorcycles parked along the street, but only one man walked toward the diner. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a thick beard streaked with gray. His leather vest was covered in patches and emblems that Jennifer didn't fully understand, but she recognized the main one, the Iron Skulls. The motorcycle club that everyone in Millbrook whispered about. The bell above the door chimed as he entered. The diner went silent. Not the comfortable quiet of people enjoying their meals, but the heavy, anxious silence of fear. Jennifer watched as Mrs. Patterson clutched her purse a little tighter. The young couple in booth 3 suddenly became very interested in their phones. Even old Mr. Chen, who usually chatted with everyone, stared down at his soup. The biker walked slowly to the counter, his boots heavy on the checkered floor. He didn't look threatening. He didn't scowl or swagger. He simply pulled out a stool and sat down, placing his helmet on the counter beside him. Jennifer grabbed a menu and walked over, her hands steady despite the tension crackling through the air. "What can I get you?" she asked, her voice normal and professional. He looked up at her, and she saw something in his eyes that surprised her. Weariness. Sadness, even. "Just a cheeseburger and coffee, please." "Black. Coming right up," Jennifer said, scribbling the order on her pad. She turned to head back to the kitchen when she heard chairs scraping against the floor behind her. 3 men had stood up from the corner booth. Jennifer recognized them immediately. Frank Henderson and his 2 buddies, Dale and Hank. They were construction workers. Good customers who came in regularly after their shifts. But Frank had a reputation. He drank too much, talked too loud, and had a temper that flared up fast. Frank was already a few beers in. Jennifer could tell by the flush in his cheeks and the slight wobble in his step as he moved toward the counter. Dale and Hank followed, trying to look tough, but mostly just looking uncomfortable. Well, Frank said loudly, his voice dripping with false friendliness. "Look what we got here, boys. One of those biker thugs, right here in our diner." In our town, the biker didn't turn around. He kept his eyes forward, his jaw tight, but he didn't respond. Jennifer felt her stomach drop. She'd seen Frank like this before, looking for a fight, feeding off the attention. "I'm talking to you," Frank continued, moving closer. "You deaf or just stupid? We don't want your kind around here. You and your gang of criminals need to get back on those bikes and ride out of Millbrook." "Frank," Jennifer said quietly, "leave him alone. He's just here for lunch." Frank ignored her completely. He was on a roll now, enjoying the audience. "You know what I heard about these guys?" he announced to the diner. "I heard they run drugs. I heard they beat people up. I heard they're into all kinds of illegal stuff. And here he is, sitting in our family diner like he's a decent person." The biker's hands were flat on the counter now, his knuckles white. But still, he said nothing. Jennifer noticed the muscle working in his jaw, the way his breathing had changed. He was controlling himself, showing more restraint than Frank was. "My cousin's a cop in Riverside," Frank went on, emboldened by the biker's silence. "He told me all about your club. Said you're all ex-cons and troublemakers. Said decent people should stay far away from you. That wasn't true." Jennifer knew it wasn't true because she'd seen members of this same motorcycle club helping out at the community center last month. She'd seen them collecting donations for the food bank. She'd heard Mrs. Patterson herself talking about how some bikers had fixed her fence after the storm, refusing to take any payment. But nobody in the diner was saying anything. They were all watching, frozen, hoping someone else would intervene. Hoping the situation would just resolve itself, Frank reached out and shoved the biker's shoulder. You listening to me, tough guy? Or are you too scared to even that's enough? Jennifer's voice cut through the diner like a knife. Everyone turned to look at her. She hadn't yelled, but there was steel in her tone that surprised even herself. She stepped between Frank and the biker, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears.
Frank.
You need to back off. Right now. Frank blinked, caught off guard. Jenny, stay out of this. You don't know what you're... I know exactly what I'm doing, Jennifer interrupted. This man came in here for lunch. He sat down quietly, ordered food, and hasn't caused any problems. You're the one making a scene. You're the one being aggressive and disturbing my other customers. She could feel everyone watching her now. The young couple, Mrs. Patterson, Mr. Chen. Even Danny back in the kitchen had poked his head out to see what was happening. Jennifer's hands were shaking, but she kept them at her sides, refusing to show how nervous she was. You're defending this guy? Frank said, his voice rising. Do you know who these people are? What they do? I know they organized a toy drive last Christmas that helped 30 families in this town, Jennifer said firmly. I know they volunteer at the community center every month. I know that Rick from their club is a paramedic who saved Tommy Miller's life after that car accident. And I know that judging someone based on how they look or what they wear is wrong, Frank. You taught your own daughter that. Remember? Frank's face reddened. He looked around the diner, suddenly aware that people were watching him, not the biker. Dale and Hank had taken a step back, distancing themselves. This is ridiculous, Frank muttered. Come on, guys. Let's get out of this place. He threw some bills on their table and stormed out, Dale and Hank trailing behind him. The bell chimed angrily as the door swung shut. The rumble of their truck engine faded into the distance. The diner remained silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, conversation started again. Forks clinked against plates. Mr. Chen went back to his soup. But Jennifer noticed that people still weren't looking at her or the biker. They were pretending nothing had happened. Jennifer took a deep breath and turned to the biker. I'm sorry about that. Your burger will be right out. He looked at her for a long moment, and she saw something shift in his expression. Surprise? Gratitude? Maybe even the hint of tears in his eyes. He nodded slowly, but didn't speak. Jennifer went to the kitchen, her legs feeling weak now that the adrenaline was wearing off. Danny handed her the burger, giving her a small smile of approval. She brought the food out, set it in front of the biker, and went about her work. Her hands still trembling slightly, the biker ate in silence. When he finished, he left a $20 bill for a $12 meal, caught Jennifer's eye, and simply said, "Thank you." Then he was gone. The rumble of his motorcycle fading into the afternoon. Jennifer's manager pulled her aside later, warning her not to get involved in situations like that. It was dangerous, he said, not worth the risk. But as Jennifer drove home that evening, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. She felt like she'd done something that mattered. Something right. She had no idea that tomorrow morning would change everything. Jennifer barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Frank's angry face, heard the silence of the other customers who'd done nothing. She kept replaying the moment she'd stepped between them, wondering if she'd been brave or just foolish. By the time her alarm went off at 5 in the morning, she'd already been awake for an hour. She got dressed in the dark, pulled her hair back, and drove through the empty streets of Millbrook toward the diner. The sky was just beginning to lighten, that deep blue moment before sunrise when the world feels like it's holding its breath. Riley's diner opened at 6. And Jennifer always arrived early to help with prep work and get the coffee started. But as she turned onto Main Street, she saw something that made her foot hit the brake. The parking lot was full of motorcycles. Not just a few. Dozens of them, lined up in perfect rows, their chrome catching the first rays of morning light. Jennifer's heart started pounding. Her first thought was panic. Had she made a terrible mistake yesterday? Were they here because of what she'd done? She sat in her car for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, trying to decide what to do. She could turn around, go home, call the police. But something made her look closer. The bikers weren't acting threatening. They were just standing there, quiet and still, waiting for something, waiting for someone. Jennifer took a deep breath, grabbed her purse, and got out of her car. Her legs felt shaky, but she walked forward anyway. As she got closer, she could see there were at least 30 bikers, maybe more. All of them wearing those leather vests with the iron skulls patch, all of them watching her approach. The crowd parted as she walked through. And there, standing at the front, was the man from yesterday, the one she'd defended. Up close, in the growing morning light, she could see his face more clearly. He had kind eyes, despite the rough exterior. Eyes that had seen a lot, probably more than most people could imagine. He stepped forward, and Jennifer instinctively took a step back. But he stopped, holding up his hands in a peaceful gesture. "We didn't mean to scare you," he said, his voice gentle. "We just wanted to catch you before your shift started. Wanted to talk to you?" Jennifer looked around at all the faces watching her. Some of them were smiling. Some looked emotional. None of them looked angry or threatening. "What's this about?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. The biker cleared his throat. For such a big, intimidating-looking man, he suddenly seemed nervous. "What you did yesterday," he began. "Standing up for me like that, you have no idea what that meant." Jennifer felt her face flush. "I just did what was right." Frank was out of line. "Maybe," the biker said, "but nobody's done that for us in years. Nobody in this town has stood up and said we're worth defending. They all believe the rumors. They all think we're criminals and troublemakers." Another biker stepped forward, younger, with tattoos running down his arms. "I'm a firefighter," he said quietly. "Been with the Millbrook Fire Department for 8 years. But people see the vest and the bike, and suddenly, all they see is a thug." An older biker with gray hair spoke up next. "I'm a teacher. 4th grade at Millbrook Elementary. I love those kids like they're my own. But parents have complained, tried to get me fired, just because of this." He touched his vest. One by one, they started sharing their stories. The man who ran a small business repairing electronics, the woman who was a nurse at the county hospital, the guy who volunteered at the animal shelter every weekend, the veteran who'd served 2 tours overseas and came home to find people crossing the street to avoid him. Jennifer felt tears welling up in her eyes. She'd seen these people around town, had probably served some of them at the diner without even realizing they were part of the Iron Skulls. They weren't the monsters everyone made them out to be. They were just people. People who'd found family and belonging in each other. "We're not perfect," the first biker continued. "We've got our problems like everyone else. Some of us have made mistakes in the past. Some of us are still trying to put our lives back together. But we're not what this town thinks we are. We're not criminals. We're not dangerous. We're just trying to live our lives and take care of each other. Then why does everyone think those things about you?" Jennifer asked. A woman with long brown hair and kind eyes stepped forward. "About 12 years ago, a different motorcycle club rolled through Millbrook. They caused trouble, got into fights, vandalized some property. They were only here for a weekend, but the damage was done. After that, people started treating all bikers the same. Didn't matter that we'd been here for years, helping out, being good neighbors. One bad group ruined it for everyone. We tried to show people who we really were," another member added. "We organized charity events, volunteered, helped people who needed it. But nobody wanted to see past the leather and the bikes. Nobody wanted to give us a chance." Jennifer thought about Mrs. Patterson, who'd sat in that diner yesterday, clutching her purse in fear. The same Mrs. Patterson who'd told Jennifer just 2 weeks ago about the kind bikers who'd fixed her fence. It had never occurred to Jennifer that they might be the same people. "Yesterday, when that guy was pushing me, saying all those things," the first biker said, his voice thick with emotion, "I was ready for it. I'm used to it. I was just going to eat my food, pay my bill, and leave. That's what I always do. Keep my head down. Don't make waves. Don't give anyone a reason to call the cops on me." He paused, wiping his eyes quickly. "But then you stepped in. You didn't know me. You had no reason to defend me. You could have lost your job, could have made those guys angry at you. But you did it anyway. You saw me as a person. And I can't remember the last time someone in this town did that." The other bikers were nodding, and Jennifer could see that several of them were crying too. These tough-looking men and women, covered in leather and tattoos, were standing in a parking lot at dawn, crying because someone had shown them basic human decency. "We wanted to thank you," the biker said. "But we also wanted to ask you something." Jennifer waited, her heart still pounding, but no longer from fear. "We want to organize an event," he continued. "A community barbecue, something where people can meet us, talk to us, see who we really are. We've tried before, but nobody came. Nobody trusted us. But you're respected here. You've lived here a long time. People know you. If you helped us, if you told people it was okay, maybe they'd give us a chance." Jennifer looked at all the faces around her. People who just wanted to be seen. People who were tired of being judged for how they looked instead of who they were. She thought about how scared she'd been walking up to this group just minutes ago, and how wrong that fear had been. "I'll help you," she said simply. The relief that washed over their faces was immediate. Several bikers smiled. Some shook their heads in disbelief. The first biker extended his hand, and Jennifer shook it firmly. "Thank you," he said. "You have no idea what this means to us," but Jennifer thought maybe she did understand. Because in that moment, standing in a parking lot surrounded by people the town feared, she felt something powerful. She felt like she was part of something bigger than herself, something that might actually change things as the sun finally broke over the horizon. Painting everything golden, Jennifer and the Iron Skulls started making plans. And for the first time in a long time, hope felt like more than just a word. The next 3 weeks were unlike anything Jennifer had ever experienced. Every evening after her shift at the diner, she met with members of the Iron Skulls at their clubhouse on the edge of town. The first time she drove out there, her hands were sweating on the steering wheel. The building looked rough from the outside, all weathered wood and motorcycle parts scattered in the yard. But inside, it was surprisingly ordinary. There was a kitchen, a meeting room with folding chairs, photos on the walls of club events and fallen members. They wanted to remember planning the barbecue turned out to be harder than Jennifer expected. Not because the bikers weren't helpful. They were eager, almost too eager, throwing out ideas faster than she could write them down. The hard part was convincing the rest of Millbrook that this was a good idea. Jennifer started with the people she knew best. The regular customers at Riley's Diner. She'd bring it up casually while refilling coffee or bringing out plates of food. "Hey, the Iron Skulls are organizing a community barbecue next month. Should be fun. Free food, music, activities for kids." Responses were always the same. Uncomfortable silence. Polite excuses. Mrs. Patterson actually laughed, thinking Jennifer was joking. When she realized Jennifer was serious, the old woman's face fell. "Honey, those people are dangerous. Why would you get involved with them?" "They're not dangerous," Jennifer said quietly. "They're the ones who fixed your fence, remember? After the storm?" Mrs. Patterson blinked. "That was them? Those motorcycle people?" "Yes, and they never asked for anything in return. They just helped because you needed it." But even that wasn't enough to convince her. The fear ran too deep, had been there too long. Jennifer tried the local businesses next. The hardware store owner said he couldn't sponsor an event like that. Bad for his image. The owner of the grocery store said the same thing. Even the pastor at the Methodist church, who preached about loving thy neighbor every Sunday, politely declined to help promote the event. It was frustrating in a way Jennifer hadn't anticipated. She'd thought that once people knew the truth, they'd change their minds. But fear isn't logical. It doesn't care about facts. It just sits in your chest and makes you believe things that aren't true. One evening, after another day of rejections, Jennifer sat in the clubhouse feeling defeated. The bikers could see it on her face. "It's not working," she admitted. "I've talked to dozens of people, and nobody wants to come. They're all too scared." The leader of the club, whose name was Robert, nodded slowly. He didn't look surprised. "We figured this might happen. We appreciate you trying, though." "More than you know. There has to be a way," Jennifer said. "People just need to see who you really are." A younger member named Chris spoke up. He was the firefighter, the one who'd talked about how people only saw his vest, not his service. What if we showed them? Not at some big event, but just in regular life. What if we made it impossible for them to ignore us? What do you mean? Jennifer asked. I mean, we're already out there doing good things. We just do it quietly. Maybe we need to be more visible about it. Over the next week, the Iron Skulls became hard to miss in Millbrook. They organized a cleanup day at the town park, showing up in their vests with trash bags and work gloves. They set up a booth at the farmer's market, collecting donations for the food bank. They helped the elderly Mr. Chen carry his groceries to his car. They fixed a broken swing set at the elementary school playground, and slowly, very slowly, people started to notice. Jennifer was at the diner when she overheard two women talking in a booth. I saw those bikers at the park yesterday, one said. They were cleaning up all that trash by the creek. Spent hours out there, really? The other woman said, sounding surprised. Yeah, and they were really nice. One of them helped my son find his baseball that went into the bushes. Even played catch with him for a few minutes. Jennifer smiled to herself as she poured their coffee. It was working. Not quickly, but it was working. The breakthrough came from an unexpected place. The Millbrook Gazette, the small local newspaper, sent a reporter to interview Jennifer. A young woman named Ashley, who'd heard about the upcoming barbecue and wanted to write a story. They met at the diner during Jennifer's break. Ashley had her laptop out, her recorder running. So tell me about this event, she said, and why you're involved with the Iron Skulls. Jennifer told her everything. About the confrontation with Frank, about the bikers showing up the next morning, about learning who they really were. She talked about Robert, the club president, being a veteran, who struggled with nightmares but never missed a volunteer shift at the community center. About Lisa, the nurse who'd saved 3 lives in the emergency room just last month. About David, who fostered rescue dogs and found them good homes. Ashley listened, taking notes, asking questions. Jennifer couldn't tell if she was getting through to her or not. The reporter's face stayed neutral, professional. Can I meet them? Ashley asked finally. The club members. Jennifer set up a meeting at the clubhouse that evening. She was nervous, worried about how it would go, but she shouldn't have been. The Iron Skulls were themselves honest and open. They showed Ashley their community service logs, photos of their charity work. Letters from people they'd helped. Robert told her about serving in Afghanistan, about coming home and not knowing where he fit anymore. The club saved my life, he said simply. These people became my family when I didn't have one. They gave me purpose again. Chris talked about responding to a house fire where a child was trapped inside. I ran into that burning building wearing this vest under my gear, he said, touching the leather. Same vest, people say, makes me dangerous. But that day, it was just part of who I am. And I brought that little girl out alive. Ashley listened to all of it, her professional mask slipping to show real emotion. When she left that night, she shook everyone's hand and promised to write a fair story. The article came out 3 days later on the front page. The headline read, "The Bikers Next Door, Getting to Know Millbrook's Most Misunderstood Citizens." It was everything Jennifer had hoped for and more. Ashley had captured their stories perfectly, showing them as real people with real lives. The response was immediate. Jennifer's phone started ringing that afternoon. People she'd talked to weeks ago who'd said no were calling to say they'd changed their minds. They wanted to help with the barbecue. They wanted to donate food, supplies, their time. Mrs. Patterson came into the diner that day with the newspaper in her hand. I read the article, she said to Jennifer. I feel terrible. Those boys who fixed my fence, I never even thanked them properly. I was so scared I just stayed inside until they left. You can thank them at the barbecue, Jennifer said gently. Mrs. Patterson nodded, tears in her eyes. I'll be there. And I'm bringing my famous potato salad. By the end of the week, over 50 people had committed to attending. Local businesses started donating supplies. The mayor's office called to say they'd help promote the event. Even Frank, the construction worker who'd started all of this, sent a message through a friend saying he might stop by. Jennifer met with the Iron Skulls that Friday evening to share the news. The clubhouse erupted in cheers and applause. Robert pulled Jennifer into a bear hug, lifting her off her feet. We did it, he said, his voice choked with emotion. We actually did it. But But Jennifer knew the real test was still coming. The barbecue was in 2 days, and whether it succeeded or failed would determine if Millbrook could really change or if fear would win after all. The morning of the barbecue, Jennifer woke up at 4 a.m. with her stomach in knots. She'd barely slept, running through everything that could go wrong. What if nobody showed up? What if people came but stayed in their own groups, refusing to talk to the bikers? What if Frank showed up drunk and started another fight? She got dressed and drove to the clubhouse as the sun was just starting to rise. But she wasn't the first one there. The Iron Skulls had been up even earlier. Robert was already firing up 3 massive grills. Lisa was setting up tables with red and white checkered tablecloths. Chris and a few others were hanging banners and stringing lights between the trees. Couldn't sleep either? Robert asked when he saw Jennifer. She laughed nervously. Is it that obvious? We're all nervous, he admitted. This is our chance. Maybe our only chance. If today goes badly, he didn't finish the sentence. Didn't have to. They both knew what was at stake. By 10 a.m, everything was ready. The grills were hot, the food was prepared, and music was playing softly from speakers someone had set up. The clubhouse yard had been transformed. Children's games were set up in one area. Tables loaded with food filled another. There was even a small stage where a few club members, who played guitar, were planning to perform later. The event was supposed to start at 11. At 10:45, no one had arrived yet. Jennifer stood near the entrance, watching the empty road, trying not to panic. The bikers tried to look busy, adjusting things that didn't need adjusting, checking food that was already perfect. 11 o'clock came, then 11:15. Still no one. Jennifer saw the hope draining from the faces around her. Lisa had tears in her eyes. Chris was staring at the ground. Robert's jaw was clenched tight, that same look he'd had in the diner when Frank was yelling at him. They're just running late, Jennifer said, but even she didn't believe it. Then at 11:20, a car turned onto the road, leading to the clubhouse. Then another, and another. Within 10 minutes, the parking area was filling up. People were actually coming. Mrs. Patterson was one of the first to arrive, carrying her promised potato salad. She walked straight up to Robert, set down the dish, and extended her hand. You fixed my fence, she said. I never properly thanked you. I'm sorry for that. Robert shook her hand, his eyes glistening. It was our pleasure, ma'am. More people kept arriving, families with children, elderly couples, young adults. Even some of the business owners who'd initially refused to help. By noon, Jennifer estimated there were over 200 people there, maybe more. The nervous energy of the morning transformed into something else, something beautiful. Jennifer watched as a little boy, maybe 6 years old, walked up to one of the biggest, most tattoo-covered bikers and asked about his motorcycle. The biker, a man named Terry, who looked absolutely terrifying at first glance, knelt down to the boy's level and spent 20 minutes explaining every part of the bike, letting the kid sit on it, showing him how the horn worked. The boy's mother stood nearby, cautious at first, but as she watched Terry's gentle patience with her son, her whole posture relaxed. By the end, she was thanking Terry and taking photos of her son on the motorcycle. Jennifer saw Chris, the firefighter, talking with a group of parents about fire safety. They were listening intently, asking questions, treating him like the professional he was. One of the fathers mentioned his son wanted to be a firefighter. Chris's face lit up, and he started telling the boy about the training, the challenges, the rewards. Lisa, the nurse, had attracted a crowd of older residents who were asking her medical questions. She answered each one carefully, professionally, even offering to check someone's blood pressure when they mentioned being worried about it. The food brought people together in a way nothing else could. Everyone ate the same burgers, the same potato salad, the same homemade desserts. The barriers started coming down with every shared meal, every conversation, every laugh. Jennifer was refilling the lemonade when she heard a familiar voice behind her. Smells good. She turned to see Frank standing there, looking uncomfortable. He wasn't drunk this time. He was sober, dressed in clean clothes, his hands shoved in his pockets. Frank, Jennifer said, surprised. You came. Yeah, well, he looked around, avoiding her eyes. I read that article in the paper. It's made me think about some things. Robert walked over, and Frank tensed up. For a moment, Jennifer held her breath, remembering that day in the diner. Look, Frank said, his voice rough. I owe you an apology. What I said that day, how I acted, that wasn't right. Was drunk and stupid, and I believed things without knowing if they were true. Robert studied him for a moment, then extended his hand. We all make mistakes. What matters is what we do after. Frank shook his hand, relief evident on his face. Can I get one of those burgers? They really do smell amazing. Help yourself, Robert said with a genuine smile. And Frank, thanks for coming. As the afternoon wore on, Jennifer watched small miracles happen all around her. She saw Mr. Chen from the diner teaching some of the bikers how to play chess. She saw teenagers asking club members about their motorcycles, talking about engines and road trips. She saw elderly women sharing recipes with the bikers' wives and girlfriends. The mayor showed up around 2 o'clock. He'd said he would make an appearance, but Jennifer had expected him to stay for 10 minutes, shake a few hands, and leave. Instead, he stayed for over an hour, genuinely engaging with people, asking the club members about their community service projects, even suggesting ways the town could officially partner with them on future events. Around 3 o'clock, some of the bikers who played music took the small stage. They played classic rock, some country, even a few modern songs. People gathered around, some sitting on blankets, some standing and swaying to the music. Children danced without any self-consciousness, and soon adults joined them. Jennifer found herself standing next to Lisa, watching it all unfold. I can't believe this is really happening, Lisa said, wiping tears from her eyes. You all deserve this, Jennifer replied. You always did, but it wouldn't have happened without you. None of this would have happened if you hadn't stood up that day in the diner. Jennifer thought about that moment, how scared she'd been, how she'd almost stayed quiet like everyone else. I just did what anyone should do, but most people don't, Lisa said. That's what makes it matter. As the sun started to sink lower, in the sky, painting everything in golden light, Jennifer saw Robert standing alone for a moment, looking out at the crowd. She walked over to him. You did it, she said simply. He shook his head. We did it. All of us together. Are you happy? Jennifer asked. Robert was quiet for a moment, watching a little girl show her grandmother how to do a silly dance she'd learned from one of the bikers. You know what the hardest part has been? He said finally. It's not people being afraid of us. It's knowing that we're good people, that we do good things, and having nobody see it. Feeling invisible in a town we've lived in for years, his voice cracked a little. Today, for the first time in longer than I can remember, I feel seen. People are looking at us and actually seeing who we are. Do you know how much that means? Jennifer nodded, because she did know. She'd seen it in every face, every conversation, every moment of connection happening around them. The barbecue didn't end until well after dark. People lingered, not wanting the day to end. As families finally started leaving, they thanked the Iron Skulls, asked about future events, exchanged phone numbers. Children begged their parents to come back soon. When the last guest had left, the club members stood together in the now quiet yard, looking at each other in amazement. They'd dreamed of this for years, and it actually happened. But what none of them knew yet was that this was just the beginning. The Monday after the barbecue, Jennifer walked into Riley's diner, expecting everything to go back to normal. But normal had changed. The morning rush was busier than usual, and everyone wanted to talk about the event. People who'd been there shared stories with those who hadn't made it. Mrs. Patterson sat in her usual booth, showing photos on her phone to anyone who'd look. That's me with Robert, she said proudly, pointing at a picture. Did you know he served 3 tours overseas? 3. And here we were, treating him like a criminal. Even Jennifer's manager, who'd warned her to stay out of trouble just weeks ago, pulled her aside. I heard the event went well, he said. Really well. I'm sorry I doubted you. But the real change became clear when Robert and a few other club members walked into the diner around 10 that morning. The usual silence didn't fall over the room. Instead, several people called out greetings. Mr. Chen waved them over to his table to continue. A chess discussion they'd started at the barbecue. A young mother with 2 kids stopped by their table to thank them again for the motorcycle. Demonstration her sons had loved, Jennifer brought them coffee with a huge smile on her face. Guess you don't have to eat in silence anymore. Robert laughed, but she could see the emotion in his eyes. It feels different, he said quietly. Feels like home. Over the next few weeks, the transformation of Millbrook continued. The Millbrook Gazette ran a follow-up story about the barbecue, complete with dozens of photos, showing bikers and residents laughing together, children playing, families sharing meals. The headline read, "Community Comes Together, Millbrook's Day of Unity." The Iron Skulls started getting invited to things. The elementary school asked if Chris could come talk to kids about fire safety. The library invited Lisa to speak about healthcare careers. The Veterans Association reached out to Robert about joining their monthly meetings. These weren't just polite gestures. People genuinely wanted them involved. Jennifer watched it all unfold with a sense of pride she'd never quite felt before. But what surprised her most was how much she'd changed too. Before all this, she'd gone through life playing it safe, keeping her head down, not making waves. Now she understood that sometimes making waves was exactly what needed to happen. One afternoon, about a month after the barbecue, Jennifer was wiping down tables when a young woman came into the diner. She was probably in her mid-20s, with nervous eyes and a backpack slung over her shoulder. She sat at the counter and ordered just a coffee, nursing it slowly, checking her phone repeatedly. Jennifer noticed the motorcycle helmet on the seat next to her. "You ride?" she asked casually. The woman looked up, startled. "Oh, yeah. Just got my license, actually. I'm thinking about joining a club, but..." She trailed off, looking uncertain. "But what?" Jennifer asked. "I'm scared," the woman admitted. "I've heard stories about how people treat bikers in small towns. I don't want that kind of judgment, you know." Jennifer smiled. "What's your name?" "Katie." "Well, Katie, you're in the right town. Things are different here now." Jennifer told her about the Iron Skulls, about everything that had happened. Katie listened, her eyes getting wider. "So people actually accept them now?" Katie asked. "More than accept. They're part of the community. Let me give you Robert's number. He's the club president. I think you'd like them." Katie left the diner with Robert's contact information and something else, hope. Jennifer watched her go, realizing this was part of the change too. Millbrook was becoming a place where people didn't have to hide who they were. The Iron Skulls organized another community event 2 months later. This time, it was a toy drive for Christmas. They set up collection boxes all over town, and the response was overwhelming. The clubhouse garage filled up with donated toys, bikes, games, and clothes. On Christmas Eve, they dressed up in Santa hats and delivered everything to families in need. Jennifer went with them on some of the deliveries. She saw the looks on children's faces when these big, tough-looking bikers showed up with armloads of presents. She saw single mothers cry with relief and gratitude. She saw how much it meant to the club members to be trusted with something so important. Frank, the construction worker who'd started everything with his anger in the diner, had become one of the club's biggest supporters. He'd even started riding with them occasionally on weekend trips. "I was wrong," he told Jennifer one day. "I was wrong about everything, and I'm glad you called me out on it." The mayor's office officially recognized the Iron Skulls as a community service organization. They got a certificate and everything. Robert framed it and hung it in the clubhouse, right next to photos from the barbecue. But perhaps the biggest change happened at Riley's Diner itself. The owner decided to dedicate one wall to community photos. Right in the center was a large picture from the barbecue showing Jennifer standing between Robert and Mrs. Patterson. All 3 of them laughing. Underneath it, a small plaque read, "One person's courage can change everything." Jennifer felt embarrassed every time she saw it, but the club members loved it. They'd come in and point it out to anyone who'd listen, telling the whole story over and over one evening. Almost 6 months after that first confrontation, Jennifer was closing up the diner when Robert stopped by. He wasn't there to eat. He had something to show her. "We took a vote," he said, pulling something from his vest pocket. "Unanimous decision." He handed her a patch. It was custom-made, with her name on it and the words Honorary Iron Skulls, member embroidered in silver thread. "We wanted you to have this," Robert said. "You're family now. You've always been family, but we wanted to make it official." Jennifer held the patch, her hands trembling. "I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. We just wanted you to know what you mean to us. What you did for us." Robert's voice got thick. "You gave us our dignity back. You gave us a chance to show people who we really are. That's something we can never repay." Jennifer hugged him, not caring that she was crying. "You already have repaid me. Every single day. Watching this town change, watching people see the truth, that's all the payment I need." The story of what happened in Millbrook spread beyond the town. Other communities heard about it. Some reached out to the Iron Skulls, asking for advice on how to bridge divides in their own towns. Robert and other club members started traveling to speak at community events. Sharing their experience, Jennifer went back to her regular life, serving coffee and meals at Riley's diner. But nothing was regular anymore. Every day brought new reminders of how much had changed. The sound of motorcycles no longer made people tense up. Instead, people looked up and waved. Children ran to the windows to watch them pass. The Iron Skulls had become as much a part of Millbrook as the diner itself. Years later, when Jennifer's niece came to visit and asked about the patch, Jennifer kept framed in her living room. She told her the whole story. The girl listened, fascinated. "So you were scared, but you did it anyway?" the girl asked. "Yes," Jennifer said. "That's what courage really is. It's not about not being scared. It's about doing what's right, even when you are scared." "Did you know it would turn out like this?" Jennifer thought about that. "No, I had no idea. I just knew that man didn't deserve to be treated that way. I couldn't stand by and watch it happen." Her niece looked at the patch again, at the photos Jennifer had from the barbecue and other events. "I want to be like you when I grow up," Jennifer smiled. "You don't have to be like me. Just be someone who stands up when standing up matters. That's all any of us can do." The truth was, Jennifer hadn't set out to change anything. She just refused to let fear and prejudice win in that one moment. But that's how change always starts. With one person, in one moment, deciding that enough is enough. And sometimes, if you're lucky, that one moment ripples out to touch hundreds of lives. It transforms a community. It reminds everyone that beneath the leather and the tattoos, beneath the uniforms and the everyday clothes, we're all just people trying to find where we belong. Millbrook learned that lesson. And Jennifer learned that the smallest act of courage can create the biggest change. All you have to do is take that first step, even when your hands are shaking and your heart is pounding. Especially then, because that's when it matters most.